Oh boy. My name is Melissa and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Melissa.
My sobriety date is January 10th, 2009, and for that I am grateful. I have a sponsor. I have a home group. It's the Grapeseed group. We meet Saturdays at 10 o'clock, so that's new. I get really nervous, so if this program teaches us when we get it out, then it takes a lot of that power away, and what I want to be able to share tonight is that, once where I was just kind of ravaged by alcoholism, dependent on it day by day by day, and here, I can just be dependent on my higher power, you know what I mean? I'm living life instead of surviving. It talks about our inability to have real relationships, and so I'm not going to get emotional right in the beginning, but I've got some women here that drove from Jacksonville, North Carolina, and I used to sponsor them. I have a grand sponsor, my sponsor that I had here. This is my home group. This is where I got sober. You guys gave me a very solid foundation of Alcoholics Anonymous. I recently got married. That's growth for personal relationship alone. I've never been married before. That you can trust someone enough to marry them. My sponsor, Ortelo, she came and she was a part of that ceremony, and she was willing to read the prayer of St. Francis, during that ceremony. But I'm going to get up here and I'm going to tell you what it used to be like, what happened, and what it's like today. So hopefully I relay a message of hope. Who knows what's going to come out, but so what it used to be like, I'm the oldest of 3 kids, I come from an alcoholic family, to kind of fast forward, my dad died from alcoholism. He died at 55 in a nursing home, wet brain. My mom has kidney failure, so she's on dialysis, from her drug and alcohol abuse. And that relationship is better than it once was. It is kind of what it is. And, I have 2 siblings that I don't have a current phone number for, So, I remember being little and, there was always just a lot of chaos. So they would, there would be a lot of music and partying, and then all of a sudden it would kind of get bad. There would be real violent. My dad would kind of beat on my mom. I remember I've read some literature in recovery, like adult of alcoholic children, and I absolutely was the kid, like peace at any price, don't rock the boat. You know what I mean? I was little. I remember my sister, she would just fly out and she'd always call the police. But, I would grab my little brother. And it's funny, like our higher power in early sobriety, and still now it's that sunshine, like that sunlight of the spirit. There are certain words in recovery that just captivated me. And I remember even as a little girl, that light, I remember I would grab my brother and he would still kind of be in diapers, and we would hide in the closet when things would get real bad, and I would sing that song to him, like this little light of mine. So like even back then there was like a little bit of comfort there, some stories. I remember once my parents were getting into it, and my dad had beat up my mom pretty good. They were all drunk, and I remember my mom managed to lock my dad outside, and, she was on the bed. There was blood everywhere, and, she had my sister and my brother, and, my dad was outside, and he was crying, and I remember being little. I was maybe like 7 years old, and I remember looking outside the window, and I was sad for him. I was like, I went over to my mom when she was just like, comforting my sister and brother, and it was like, can we let dad in, so those feelings, because it's a big feeling disease. So to kind of fast forward, dad and mom got really sick. I remember one time my dad was having those delirium tremors, and he thought that, like I was a vampire, like it was that scary. He took a coffee table and he threw it through the front window, of the house. So, finally my mom left my dad. And I was born at the beach, but we got stationed in Wyoming, which is really crazy, but there was a Loran station that my dad worked out of. And so we all got separated there. I was about 12 years old. And so my mom left my dad, and then my dad and my sister and my brother. My brother went to go live with the grandpa. My aunt went to go live with his sister, and I tried to live with my mom. But I can see now her disease was kind of getting a hold of her. You know, my dad was real strict with her growing up. Like, she wasn't allowed to work. If she went to the grocery store, one of the kids had to be with her. And so she just kind of went wild. And she never was coming home. So I got placed in child in need of social services. So I got put like they were just kind of like watching us a lot, and so she wasn't coming home. So I actually was kind of downstairs. We lived in an apartment, and I was drinking downstairs, and, you know, the police came and I got a lot of MICs and MIPs, minor in possession of alcohol tickets, and minor in consumption of alcohol, like a lot, like probably like 8, you know, when I was underage. And so that child in need of supervision got switched over to juvenile probation. So now I'm in the custody of the state. I got took out of the house because, like I said, she wasn't coming home. And I had a really toxic relationship with my mom. Like, we partied hard, you know, and I remember, like, you know, in recovery, you got to learn how to answer the phone and, like, call people. And I remember, you know, being little, and when my mom would start dating and bringing these, like, weird guys home, like, when the phone would ring, like, she would never answer it. It would be like a fear immediately, like, don't answer the phone or don't answer the door, you know. So it was really hard in recovery to, like, kind of follow through with that kind of stuff. So I'm living in a group home. And I was about 12 years old, so I stayed in a group home until I was about 17 years old. You know, it was a group home, so I don't know. You know, it sucked. But that a lot of, you know, fear, abandonment issues. I was angry, you know, I was rebellious, bucked authority. I was mad that I was in this group home. And, you know, so I would skip school and I would get busted at these parties. And the bad thing about living in a group home is if you get busted at a party and you're drunk, you don't get to go back to the group home. Like, you have to go to jail. So I went to jail a lot as a teenager until, like, sobered up the weekend. And I remember one time, I'm like 17 years old, I'm in high school, second semester of my senior year too, I might add, because I dropped out, because that's the way I follow through, you know, I mean, I could do it all the way up to the end. And so my mom just, like, shows up at the school one day, and she's like, we got to get out of here. And I know that's her geographical change, so she's like picking me up. I'm still in custody of the state. She picks me up from school, and we just head out, and we go back to North Carolina. And so I had missed this boy. So, you know, I dropped out of school my second semester of my senior year, and I saved up enough money to got a Greyhound bus ride, so I took the bus from North Carolina back to Wyoming. I wasn't there very long at all, and I got arrested. I was at a party, and I remember I was so upset because the judge gave me 279 days in jail, all suspended, but like 2, but the clause was I'm a minor, so my mom has to come and get me. Well, you know, she didn't come, and so I had a huge resentment, but the steps, I was able to work through all that. So I sat in jail until I turned 18 years old. I actually thought when I turned 18 that I was going to move into the adult block, so, like, I thought that's what I was going to be doing, but then, like, the bailiff came downstairs, and he was like, he gives me this piece of paper that I was, like, released from the custody of the state, so I was like, does this mean what I think this means? You know, and so I was like, yeah. So I got out on my birthday. So I'm 18, I'm an adult, and really for the next couple years, I was just a menace to society. I mean, I was just looking for the party. You know, I was unemployed. I was trying to hang out with people who had, you know, who were partying. And I remember just being in crazy places, like big, like apartments where there would be like 10 or 12 people staying there. Like, reflecting back, like, I don't even remember having a toothbrush. I mean, like, really gross. But, you know, and then I remember, I think one day I was just hungry. I think I was dirty and I was hungry. And so I had called, like, an aunt in North Carolina, because my mom comes from a big toxic family. You know, she has 14 brothers and sisters, and everybody, you know, has an issue, so So yeah, I got another bus, and that's like a 3-day trip adventure on Greyhound. It's not fun. I'm grateful that, I may have to take the Greyhound again, but it's not my preferred method of traveling, for sure. So then I go back to North Carolina, and I actually, was kind of closer with an aunt, and, she was partying, but it's funny, like how they talk about in our literature, there are periods of sobriety, but then matters grow worse. I can identify with that because, I'm like, all right, so I hadn't been doing much of anything. I dropped out of high school my senior year, and so I had an aunt that was a hygienist, and this is kind of but for the grace of God, just kind of planted a little seed there. So she was like, well, why don't you do dental hygiene, and so I did. I got my GED, and I actually moved to Jacksonville, North Carolina. My little brother was there. He was living actually with some friends. He hadn't graduated from high school, and I always, he was so little when we got separated. He was only I remember him being 6 years old, and so I missed that. So I thought, oh, well, I can go to dental hygiene at a community college there, and then I can kind of restore that relationship with my brother. And so I did. I got my GED. I got accepted into a dental hygiene program, and so I did. I graduated from that, except for I was still partying, but I managed to make it through dental hygiene school, when everyone would go out drinking and dancing, those clubs are open till 2, 3 in the morning. It's we meet up at 9:30. It's 10:30, and I'm in the bathroom throwing up, getting in the car, driving to go do whatever crazy. I could never. I passed out in a lot of weird places. I remember one time I trained for a mud run. I trained for it, and I remember the night before, I just got wasted, and I still tried to run it, and I remember I came to with IVs in my arm, because I decided to drink vodka all night the night before I did this mud run. But I managed to graduate from dental hygiene school, and then this was in 2005. And so I moved up to Raleigh. My mom at that time got diagnosed with kidney failure. So I thought I could restore that relationship, right? I wanted to have my mom be a part of my life. And so my sobriety date is 2009, 2005, I moved to Raleigh. Fail. But I get moved up to Raleigh, and, my disease just gets a hold of me. I know our careers, jobs don't define us, but I never had a sense of worth, and so for me to graduate or, to get my GED and to graduate from dental hygiene school, I wasn't like that girl sitting at her table with her parents, well, what college are you going to go to? That's not a reality for me. So I was really proud of myself, not the ego proud that we're not supposed to have, but just that I followed through with something, because I was a big not follow througher. That got worse too. So, I move up there, and, I'm working, and, just crazy things kind of happen. I remember, I had some friends, and they got us tickets to go to the ACC tournament, and I think State was playing Carolina, big game, expensive tickets, and I just got wasted. I could not drink. I just got wasted right before the game. I didn't get to go to the game. I disappointed a whole bunch of people. I remember I was just crazy stuff would happen. I remember one time it was St. Patrick's Day parties. I used to get arrested a lot of holidays too. I know in sobriety that holidays are just like any other day. Acceptance high, expectations low. But I remember it was St. Patrick's Day, and I was a volunteer for Cheer America, and my role was to be on the outside of these little 8, 9-year-olds and keep them hydrated. So I'm hungover, and I'm squirting them in the face, in the ear. It was bad. And so I don't even know. I managed to make it through the parade. And then I went to the pub because it's St. Patrick's Day, and I remember I had a seizure in the bathroom. And then I remember my aunt knew some guys, and they were staying in a halfway house, and they're like, oh yeah, you need to, it just got really, really crazy. But when I drink alcohol, judgment, moral, self-respect, it doesn't matter, I'm going for it. It's around Christmas time. I remember I was dating this guy, and he was a good guy, but I just was full of lies. It's like everyone knew how sick my family was, but I wasn't being honest with how sick I was. But for me, behind closed doors, it got really, really ugly. I remember they had this huge, like, walk through Bethlehem thing, and it was like a 3-day event, and like thousands of people would pass through, and like they had me be the angel. Okay, yeah, a drunken angel up there. I mean, that actually with amends, that was the first one I did amends with, was that pastor. Probably that was a little self-seeking too, because I was thinking, he's a pastor, right? So he's not gonna like not forgive me. but I just think about that, just how gross everything was. So to kind of fast forward, I'm having a really toxic relationship with my mom. I couldn't, my inability to stop drinking just progressed. I was starting to lose jobs. Because I would do the whole, all right, well, I got to stop drinking because I have to work tomorrow. I got to stop drinking after 10, right? 10 o'clock. All right, well, 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock. And then the sun's coming up and I'm like, do I just no-show or do I call in? Like one of those things are happening. So I started losing jobs. I got to a place in my disease where I was temping, which is a perfect job for an alcoholic, right? Because you just like show up for the day and then you get cash at the end of the day. So I was temping for a little while, and then I got sick. I was having a lot of seizures. So anyone who's ever had seizures in their disease, it's like when you come to, your head obviously whacks the floor first, and it's either blood or drool, and it kind of takes you a while to like figure out where your name is or where you are. I remember towards the end of my disease, I had pushed everything that was even important to me away. You know what I mean? I lost my ability to practice dental hygiene. The state took that privilege from me away. I was so paranoid. I had blankets over my windows. Like I couldn't even go outside. Let's see, this is God. I had over my peephole because I could not stop looking out of it. Like the paranoia was so intense. And it had that courage. Courage will not always roar. Sometimes courage is a quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. Because that was the thing, like, I kept trying to not drink, but I couldn't, and the seizures were getting more and more violent. And I remember the last seizure, when my moment of clarity, the last seizure that I had when I came to, like I had paralysis on the left side of my body. So all in all, it probably only lasted about a minute or two, but it was enough to scare me. And I remember I called this uncle, which is so crazy because it was an uncle on my dad's side of the family, which I wasn't close to my dad because I was angry at him because he was a mean alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous taught me to work through that stuff as well. But that was God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself, because the fact that I even had his phone number or why I thought to call him, and I hadn't even seen him in probably about 5 years. And so I called him. And he showed up. Like, I'm in Raleigh, and he was living in Jacksonville, and he just came. Like, I just totally wrecked his world. That's disrespectful of me, too. He just came to pick me up. He saw my condition, and then we were riding back. I don't remember the car ride, because obviously I was just out of it. I know I was just kind of in and out of consciousness, and I was having a lot of muscle spasms at the end as well. So he took me to the hospital, and they were like, she needs to go to treatment, and two, because if I get an opportunity to speak about, like, making amends for all my financial wreckage that I caused, I remember, I think it was like, I don't know, like $1,700 to be in that hospital for just that little bit of time. I was like, I don't know how many, like, things of fluid they could have put in me, but that's a whole lot of money. But I righted it, like, because I paid all that stuff off. But yeah, so they're like, she needs to go to treatment. So then we drove from the hospital to Walter B. Jones. So it's like a state-run treatment center. It's in Greenville, North Carolina. And yeah, it's a state-run, treatment center. So I don't really remember the first 2 weeks. I was kind of in and out of consciousness. I will tell you, though, when you go to treatment and you tell them about the seizures, they make you sleep on the floor. So if you don't want to sleep on the floor, don't say you're having seizures. But I remember the doctor would come in and he would just be like, how you feeling today? And I remember it was just dark. It reminded me really a lot of like jail, because it was just kind of like the cement, like, walls everywhere. And so after I detox for about 2 weeks, and they put me into the facility part, and I graduated from a 30-day program there. And I remember my aunt and uncle, I went to their house. I was only there for about 2 days, I'm not sure. And then I had, like I said, I had lost my right to practice dental hygiene, and they actually have a program set up for people like dentists and hygienists that are in recovery. It's really a lot like probation, like I was on like my whole adolescent life. So it's like drug test and, checking in with people. And so they were like, well, they didn't like that treatment center, and I needed to go to another one. So they sent me out to Hope Valley, way Mayberry, way out kind of in the sticks. And I remember at the time, because it's funny to look back, like with reflection, I was so mad because I was like, I did not relapse. Why do I have to go to another treatment center? I was so mad. I was on the floor crying because, at the time, really my first 2 years of sobriety, like I didn't emotionally know how to get it together, so like little problems, I would literally be on the floor, like crying, snot coming out of it. Cynthia can bear witness to a lot of that. But so I went out to Walter B. Jones or Hope Valley, and that actually was a wonderful thing. There were 2 ladies there. It was a smaller treatment center. There was probably about 15 girls. They taught me about. They gave me a big book. And they taught me about Alcoholics Anonymous, and that there was a solution to all my problems, and that I didn't have to drink. So they gave me a good foundation. One tool that I love, there's a lot of tools that we have that we learn from each other to use in sobriety, is that, why? Like, I was so full of fear and abandonment, and I was mad, and I would be like, why? And she would just say, well, why don't matter? A lot of times people want to have answers, or you want to know why, especially when people start doubting the whole higher power thing. Well, why not? What are you doing that's working for you? At the time, nothing. So yeah, why don't you give it a shot? But so I had I graduated from that program. And then it was decided that I needed more time in recovery, so I was expedited from that treatment center to the Bethany House. And that's kind of really cool. Like, I do not like to get up here, like, I have social anxiety. Like, I'm like, it's my least area to be of service. But this is my first home group, you know what I mean? Primary purpose. It's very powerful. You guys, like I said, you gave me a strong foundation of like respect for Alcoholics Anonymous, and that I'm forever grateful. And you guys did see me in early sobriety. When I moved to Jacksonville, I was like a year and 3 months sober, and like even when they give me medallions there, like they'll cut jokes like, you should have seen her when she first came in. I'm like, you just don't even know. I was like, you got me like after a year. But so I'm in the Bethany House, and they gave me a lot of life tools. I had no life tools when I decided to get sober, like none. I didn't ever show up for life, and I didn't know how to deal with any kind of feelings. And so the Bethany House, they taught me a lot of stuff. They taught me how to get acclimated to Alcoholics Anonymous. I needed to get a home group. I needed to get a sponsor. I needed to work the steps with my sponsor. They taught me how to dress like a lady. I had a lot of rules, that whole buck and authority, and the reality is it shows me the reality of this disease. There's a lot of women that came in that house that didn't make it. I went through a lot of roommates. I graduated with girls that aren't sober, girls that passed away. So, and that goes back to the why. Well, why me? I'm not anybody, but we don't get to know the big picture, and when you get to a place in sobriety when you don't have to know the big picture, that's where that peace, that ease and comfort that you used to seek in a bottle, that's where that kind of fills in. Working the steps with my sponsor. Step 1, I remember I was like, I've already shared with you guys, like, definitely unmanageability, and I'm powerless over to not be able to drink. But, really, like, that has to be the step that you have to do 100%, like, no reservations. Like, every day I have to tell myself I'm an alcoholic, and there are things that I have to do differently. Step two actually was my funnest one to work, because I always had a wild imagination. I always wish that I was somebody else, especially like in that group home, swallowed with self-pity. And so came to believe, it was fun for me, like just to kind of entertain what that higher power could be. For me, it was that sunlight, that sunshine just kind of filled me with goodness. Mother Nature is where I really fell into the whole higher power thing. Step 3, I remember, when I did my first step 3, we did that together here in this church on our knees, and it's a wonderful thing to get to do that with other women. And then you're like, all right, well, because when I don't like to be up here, but I do like speaker meetings when I'm over there. And like when people tell their stories, like I want to know about their higher power. I want to know how they learn to trust their higher power. Like, how do you do that? How do you go outside and not drink and show up for life? Like, how do you do that? And prayer. I remember when I was first practicing step 3 and oh my gosh, you guys are so patient because all these little problems were such big problems to me because I had a wall of junk that I just never dealt with. And then, suggested, call your sponsor. So I'd call my sponsor and she'd be like, did you pray about it? And I'm like, why am I calling you? It's just like, I need answers. But it's true, prayer, and like the God box, that was something that like visually there was one at the Bethany House, and so if you had a problem, you would like pray about it, you would write on a piece of paper and you would stick it in a God box, and so, I mean, obviously like I'm obsessive, like I was obsessive about drinking. And so I'm absolutely obsessive about other things. I remember I filled up a whole box with one boy's name, I was like, it took me a while to let that go. I was like, wow. But step 4, courage, step 4 was hard for me, and you are always constantly working steps, but this first time through while I was staying at the Bethany House, step 4 was hard for me because like I'm sober and I've got to like remember all that ick, all that dark, icky feelings. I got a lot of nightmares when I was working on my step 4. It was suggested that I do them in the morning. I work on it in the morning so that way I don't get bad dreams. That was another thing. Like I self-medicated so long that I was not able to sleep. It took me up to 9 months in the sobriety to be able to sleep like a whole night through. And that's a blessing of the Bethany House too, because I wonder, I mean, we're not supposed to wonder, we are supposed to be present in the moment, but that would have been like a gateway for me, like not being able to sleep. Well, I can't sleep. So, but just to get all that out and to look at patterns of behavior and where is my part. Step 5, I remember the first time, I will say when I did my step 5, like I didn't have like an aha moment, but doing reflection, the obsession to drink alcohol was removed sometime around there. Sometime when I did my 5th step, it was right around there. I remember too, like my sponsor had a lot of animals and it was like they knew I was hurting, because like I had dogs on my feet and cats on my shoulder, it was like, I don't know, they just knew. Step 6 and 7. Willingness, there's all my defects of character, and a lot of that you'll find from doing your 4th step, you know what I mean? And that's why, when you do your 5th step, you have your sponsor, you, and your higher power. Well, your sponsor is a channel, you know what I mean, just between you and your higher power. So you just to kind of get it all out, you get to look at patterns of behavior and your defects. And then 7, humility. I remember I had a hard time with that in early sobriety because I was like, what? I said, I've been humble my whole life. I mean, it took me a long time to be able to look at people in the eye. And I was like, but then somebody had a definition for humility as it's not necessarily thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. And 6 and 7, there's just a couple sentences in the big book, and I've always felt like I had room to grow there, and so you've got your character defects and you're like, all right, well, they're like abusive and destructive patterns of behavior. So that whole humility thing I'm learning is that like, all right, well, I've got them. Well, I don't get to get rid of them. Like I have an awareness of what they are, but that's the whole 7-step prayer. Like my creator, I'm now knowing that you have all of me, good and bad, because I don't know how it's affecting other people. Like maybe a bad defective character is helping somebody walk through experience, or I'm being an example of what not to be or what to be. But yeah, he gets to take that away. So I'm kind of like understanding more about the humility thing is, just totally and completely giving myself to my higher power so he can, take that old patterns of behavior away. Steps 8 and 9, when I first came to steps 8, you get a lot of those names from your 4-step, which is ironic because they hurt me, right? But then, you're just, all the steps are in order for a reason. And so you're not like thinking about your amends or I'm not going to do that. You're just making the list, all the steps are in order for a reason. And then, coming to step 9, I remember when I first came into the program, I loved to read the promises. I did. It just kind of gave me hope. But I will say it took me a while to click that the 9th step promises are a byproduct of working step 9. So if you're on step 2, yeah, like obviously they're not going to be coming true for you. Like you have to keep trusting the process and taking action. Willingness. When I first asked my first sponsor to be my sponsor, she asked me, she's like, are you willing to go to any lengths to stay sober? Well, willingness is courage and action, So not only to kind of walk through the steps, but walk through life. For me, sobriety today is a lot about walking through the uncomfortable. That's what it's all about for me, when it's like, I'm nervous. And then I walk through it and I'm like, I have the relief for showing up and doing the right thing, not the way I used to do it, which not showing up at all or being drugged through it, and it's just a better way of living. Amends. I remember a good analogy for me was like, it's almost like a piece of cloth, it's like it's torn, and you can mend it, it won't be what it'll be, it won't be what it was, but it'll be what it'll be. And I'll tell you, like, all those promises have come true for me except for one, and those promises are amazing. Not that it's about like money, like that has nothing to do with it, but like say fear of economic insecurities, right? I remember being in my disease. If I even could make it to the mailbox, I was going to get evicted out of my apartment. If I could even make it to my mailbox, like I had this purple book bag and I would just throw my bills in there. I would take whatever cash I was getting and spend it on, obviously, getting wasted. And then I was like charging my whole life away. I remember one time I was in a grocery store. Like I just have like moments that I remember sometimes. Like obviously you're supposed to remember them when you're supposed to. But I remember I was in a grocery store and I was trying to buy food and I was using a credit card and it was declined, right? Because obviously I wasn't paying anything, I wasn't working, and I had a meltdown in the middle of the grocery store with this lady for my credit card person, like whatever contact. I was like crying to her that I was hungry and that I needed to buy food, and she was probably like, oh my gosh. And so today, like when I came into the fellowship, I was $49,000 worth of debt, right? And my first year of sobriety was just to work on my recovery, you know what I mean? Just to be able to wake up, make my bed, take a shower, brush my teeth, get acclimated to Alcoholics Anonymous, help listen, and like learn a solution to life. And so, but then when I moved out of the Bethany House, I actually got an opportunity. I say opportunity, it's funny because it was just a step up from the Bethany House because I wasn't allowed to date boys. It was not about my social life. I was only to work on my recovery and go to work. I remember I worked at the Cracker Barrel Country Store as a waitress, and I, like I said, $49,000 worth of debt. And I eventually got an opportunity to practice dental hygiene again, but I just worked all the time. Like I worked and I was still working at Cracker Barrel on the weekends, and it was like I would just pay them off like one at a time, and a lot of times, I think I had to go to court like 3 separate occasions, but like the judge, like I could honestly come to him and say, hey, this is what I owed and this is what I'm doing, and they were very kind to me because I physically couldn't do anymore. And so like today, I don't have a savings account or anything, but I do not owe anybody any money. It took me about 4.5 years, but like that's a promise that came true because of action. Step 10, that's a good opportunity for me, and I need to constantly, steps 10, 11, and 12, like I need to work at it. I need to look at my behavior every day. Not only things that I might have made a mistake in, but like areas that I did well, it's all about action. So if I don't reflect on a certain situation that maybe made me feel uneasy, then I'm not going to learn anything, because I'm not going to look at it and I'm not going to know how to do it differently. I'll just keep repeating the same behavior because that's what I always did before. Step 11. So I've always liked this. It's a tall order, right? But my favorite word in there is sought. Like I've got to seek. What does it say in our literature? Upon awakening. Not after I go to the bathroom or have a cup of coffee. You know what I mean? Like I have to invite my higher power in right when I wake up in the morning. And it's like, God's will. Well, I don't know what God's will is for me, but I do know what it's not. You know what I mean? And I really go with that. My higher power absolutely talks to me through others. So, in step 12, had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, and for me, like I didn't have one of those like burning bush moments, but like a spiritual awakening is just like that I'm able to wake up and the first thought isn't that I need to get drunk, or I can wake up and like lift my head all the way up without being like, I can eat food. My higher power shows, like one example is, like I remember one time at work, all of us were kind of doing something wrong, so I was going to get made an example, right? The office manager told me this the night before, so I'm an alcoholic, there's obsessive thinking, I'm just like, and so I was like trying to give it to God, so like I don't like worry about it, and so I'm in the meeting, and there was like 15 women all in a circle, and I knew that I was going to be made an example of what not to do. And I was like sitting there, I was like, just be, constructive, feedback, and I'll learn from the opportunity. And one of the doctor's son was like 5 years old, and he comes running upstairs and he gives me a flower. But it's little things like that. Like that was my higher power telling me that I'm going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be all right. Power of Alcoholics Anonymous. I remember like really in recovery, because I had such a sheltered, which is good, because I needed that time, of just not being drunk and just being able to learn to do like basic stuff that I didn't know how to do. I've been in my worst shenanigans, actually with work, like they'll send us away like to conferences and stuff like that. And that's a blessing that someone would like pay for me to go out of state somewhere and trust me there. But I remember one time a bunch of us girls, we were going to this fancy dinner, and like everyone knew at work that I didn't drink. And so this is all learning experience. I'm learning every single day. But, before we left to go to this restaurant, everyone's like, well, Melissa, you're going to be responsible for making sure we all get home tonight. I know now that no, I'm not responsible for doing that. But like when I got there to dinner, it was just like, everyone's sober, and then there it got started. Like, I had to watch the whole progression, of just people being drunk and broken wine glasses and everyone slurring and, like, leaning on me. And I just, like how it says recoiled like a flame. Like, I just, like, wanted to get out of there. But just the way it happened, I couldn't. But the power of Alcoholics Anonymous is when I got back to the hotel, we all got there because they were all going to go out to dinner the next night, which I did not participate in that dinner adventure. But I called my sponsor, and you know what she recommended to do? To call Intergroup and to get a location of a meeting. So I'm in another state, and I was able to use the tools that we have and call Intergroup, and then they gave me a location which would be the closest meeting for me to go to. And then, and all that insanity, for an hour and a half out of that day, like I felt that ease and comfort, just being safe with people who want to be sober too. Yeah, so, but, so many wonderful things have happened. I don't have a good memory, obviously, brain damage, but there's so many wonderful things have happened because of this program, like I said, I got married, not that it was about that, but I remember some of the best advice Taylor ever gave me was, I remember, because obviously, like, I'm in the halfway house, and, like, I wanted to date, right? And like I wasn't allowed to. So she would always say, because I was always looking for a fix, like that was the old me. And so, she had suggested, don't, wait till you get into a place where a man will complement my life instead of fix. And it did, my higher powers plan. It took me, God willing, I stay sober a month from now, will be 7 years, but it took a lot of years for me to get to a place where I cleaned up all my wreckage so that I could walk into a relationship wholly and not have to bring all my wreckage. It's nice to not have wreckage. That's another opportunity for the 10th step. Like, I don't get to hold on and beat myself up like I used to. You know what I mean? I can look at a situation and I can be like, all right, and then I can give it to God. And then that's it. I don't hang on to it or be like, I just try not to repeat the behavior. But that inability to form real relationships, like I shared at the beginning of the meeting, it's just I never had any friends like growing up. I didn't have that long-term best friend, and in sobriety, like I have real relationships. I'm just grateful for this program. And, like I said, I just got married a month and a half ago, and I moved to West Virginia. I got married 2 days later. I moved to West Virginia, and I'm just treating myself like a newcomer. Like I'm going to meetings every single day. I'm trying to like get to know all the women, and it's uncomfortable. Like I forget, like I was so comfortable in, Jacksonville because I had been there for years. Like things don't happen overnight. Like you have to continue to take action. Just because I feel that anxiety, like doesn't mean I get to stop and not do the work. And so I have to remember it didn't just happen overnight. Like I had to walk through a lot of uncomfortable. So here I am again. So I'm going to meetings every day. And it's funny, I finally got, a sponsor, because you're not supposed to take people's inventory, but when you're looking for a sponsor, you're totally taking people's inventory, I was like, like at night I would always reflect on that. But yeah, I'm meeting a lot of people, and they're having a Christmas party, holiday party this Saturday. So it's pretty neat, when you move into like a new place, that you can just get acclimated and just have a host of friends, real friends that don't judge you. But I'm grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous, and I hope I shared some hope.